Hey, what's going on everyone? It's me, Mr. Mario, and welcome back to another episode of ModChat. For those who do not know, this here is a podcast I do in two different forms. First of all, it is available in a video visual form here on the Mr. Mario 2011 YouTube, Rumble, and Odyssey channels. Secondly, it is also available in an audio-only podcast form, like an actual podcast, so you can take it around and listen to it wherever the hell you want to. Simply look up ModChat, all one word, on your favorite podcasting app, host, provider, or platform, and you should hopefully be able to find it. I know it's not available on all of them, but it is available on most of them. Either way, this here is a podcast I do at least monthly, in which I come to you all and I talk about things that I find new, interesting, cool, maybe do a little bit of show and tell in the world of video game modding and video game console modding. I do tell people that this is not necessarily a news show, however, there are people who do use this for their news consumption, and you know, as long as you're able to maybe learn a little bit of something and be entertained all at once, more power to you. That's awesome. I just don't think it's frequent enough to be that breaking news show, but there's been a few times we've broken some news here in the past. First of all, I will say, I didn't think it would take me until the end of the month to do an episode. My bad on that, but sometimes that happens. Life will get in the way. Y'all know how it goes. So this is probably going to be a little bit of a longer one here. I'm literally recording this right at the beginning, so I don't know what the runtime is right now. But either way, there's going to be a whole lot of stuff that we're talking about. If you want to just hang out, watch this, listen, and maybe have Lily the dog on the side. I wanted her face to show more on here, but she just choosing to sleep that way, which is okay. Either way, let's just get into this episode. How about that? We'll make it a little easier.
So even though this was at the beginning of this month, we are going to jump into some of the newest stuff here, mainly pertaining to the Switch 2, because I'm sure that's what's going to be on most people's minds here. But we do have this over on Blue Sky from Retro ID, or David Buchanan here, in which he had said, and this got my attention originally, he said Userland ROP on day one. Now, if you look at this here, this is from the release date of the Switch 2. He also followed this up by saying Compat Trampoline is a beautiful name for a shared library, and here is a video which excited a lot of people several weeks ago, in which he said, here's a frame buffer graphics demo. This has no practical purpose, and I can't prove I'm not just like playing a YouTube video or something. And to clarify, I don't have native code execution. This is all in a Userland ROP context. And if you're wondering why it's only a tiny square in the corner, if I tried drawing the whole screen, the frame rate would be terrible. He also stated here he did follow up later on with people asking which firmware version should I leave my Switch 2 on if I want to hack it. And the answer is, I don't know. Nobody knows. Different versions have different attack surfaces. Unless you're a security researcher doing security research, you probably shouldn't care. Use your Switch for playing games. So this ended up exciting a whole lot of people here, and you know what? Yeah, shout out to Billy. I'll go ahead and like that there. But this ended up exciting a whole lot of people because, as you can see from this, if we go ahead and blow it up here, this is, of course, his Switch 2, which I guess you can say, I would technically say this is unsigned code execution right here. Like, this is what's loading up. But this is not anything in regard to a jailbreak, in regard to a kernel exploit. This is no custom firmware, none of that. This is really a proof of concept, and it's only in Userland. So while this is something, and that's something that is certainly better than nothing, it's a very, very, very small step going forward for the process of what everybody would want and hope for, which is, having like a full-blown custom firmware jailbreak modified Switch 2. This is actually discussed in more detail over on Wololo.net, in which they did a little bit of a news wrap-up here for right when the Switch 2 ended up launching. So they showed a few things such as here, like some switches were shipped with a factory or debug firmware. I will say, at least from experience with the original Switch, this is a lot, this looks to be more exciting than it actually is. I really put it like this, like when this happened on the original Switch, there were a few systems that got out like this, and even later on in the life cycle this happened, and usually the response from people, like they would try to get these photos over to security researchers, reverse engineers and such, and with the way this was set up, the answer was almost always, hey, that's kind of cool, but you should probably just send it back to Nintendo and, get it switched up with the actual working units, because we can't really do that much with it, and you're not going to do anything with it either, so unless you're cool with having a brick, just go ahead, return it, and swap it out. Like, these are the actual, important figures, I would say, who were saying that. So this was interesting to see, at least. This was originally some news with the MiG switch, which we are going to be covering later on here. However, here, this is what I was talking about, in which they were talking about the user mode or Userland exploit here. And when it was being discussed a little bit, I wanted to share this because they were stating, they shared a little more, as in Wololo here, but they stated that Retroid is known, among other things, for his work on DCENC, Root to My TV, or closer home, his NX loader tool for the Switch. He recently published a proof of concept to gain root access on a laptop via a cigarette lighter. And now, Wololo's personal take here, user mode generally is native code in my book. It's just not access to all the libraries that a full kernel exploit would allow. By comparison, I'd say that running PSP exploits on the PS Vita wasn't native because we were only running PSP exploits within the PSP emulator on the Vita. Then again, what do I know? Nothing. It is actually very possible that the hacker achieved some user mode exploit within the Switch 1 retro compatibility layer. As proof that his exploit is real, Retroid has mentioned the name of a Switch 2 library, which is nsOne Trampoline, knowledge which he implies one only could access via a hack. nsOne Trampoline is a lib used in the Switch 1 emulation compatibility layer of the Switch 2, but they're saying that this wiki page was created after Retroid's announcement. So that's certainly something interesting here, and at least exciting for the Switch 2. I mean, this was day one on the Switch 2. That was still cool nonetheless. Now, this has been one here that has been setting the internet on fire for a bit, and this is in regard to the MiG switch, or the MiG Flash. For those who do not know, I have covered this before, and this article, of course, is from The Verge, but I've covered this before in ModChat. I've talked about it a few times. People have asked for updates. There hasn't really been any major updates on it, and I even said it's kind of just, there's not too much further you can go with it, really. The last major update was that it didn't work originally on the Switch 2, and they issued a update that you could flash to the MiG, and now it works on the Switch 2. But there's not really much further. I know there was people who they were really hoping for like pie in the sky and hoping that you'd be able to find a whole new exploit and run custom firmware only using a game or something. And I had said at the very beginning, I said, no, that's not happening. That's not happening at all unless you're using it on a custom firmware switch and you're trying to get more usage out of it, like put in an extra menu or something. Point being on here, with the MiG Flash itself, like I said, it didn't originally work on the Switch 2. It was updated to work, but then what people were running into here was they were running into this error code, the 2134-4508 error code, which means that their console, not their account, thankfully, but their console, at least, the Switch 2 console, ended up being permanently banned from online usage. So that way you couldn't access the eShop, you couldn't play online, you couldn't do any of that stuff there. There have been a lot of people who have reported this, and I wanted to talk about this a bit because for some people who might be thinking, okay, well, these people were obviously, they were using shared games, they're using pirated games. Actually, that doesn't seem to be the case. The reason why this was so big here was because there were many people who were getting banned very quickly. Once that update came out for the MiG Flash, people were using it, and within 24 hours, I would say, people started getting banned for using the MiG Flash on their Switch 2, because it was starting to boot up in-game. And these were games that these people had claimed, at least, that they purchased themselves, they got them new, they didn't share them, they didn't run pirated games, they just used their own game backups, which, from what I've observed, seeing this, because now it's been out for a bit at least, if you only did that, if you just used it strictly with your own game backups, you didn't share them, you didn't pirate or anything, it seemed to be okay on the original Switch. Okay as in you wouldn't get banned for that. But on the Switch 2, people were getting banned incredibly quickly for using this. And I did at least want to talk about this here, just because I still find the MiG at least interesting in regard to a technical aspect of it. Do keep in mind, I do not own one. I really don't plan to get one. I'm not interested in actually getting one like that. However, the interesting thing that people were really discussing and bringing up was how exactly this is being detected. And some people were thinking it could be from voltage changes, it could be from how long the game ROM takes to load off a microSD card, it could be detecting how many times you insert and eject the cartridge itself. I actually don't think it's any of that. I'm not going to come to you all with the answer, but I'm at least going to be able to dispel that a little bit here, actually using one of my own videos. Now keep in mind, before the MiG Flash update ended up going out, you could put the cartridge into the system, games would show up, but you could not boot up any games. You wouldn't get this exact error, but you would get an error similar to this if you were trying to play one of your games. However, I ended up getting a Switch 2 the day it came out. I believe I ended up releasing this video the day after it ended up releasing, and this here was my unboxing and my first tests and everything that I used on the Switch 2. Now I'm showing this here because this is one of these game switcher or cartridge adapters in which you can put multiple cartridges into it, and then as opposed to plugging your cartridges in and out, you just plug the adapter in here and you can press this button on the side to switch out your cartridges. This is something, it's either one of those devices you love it or you don't see the point to it and you hate it. I'm one of those people, I love it. I actually have two of these devices, and you could see here, this is my Switch. It was connected online. You could, well, kind of see that there. So it is connected online. This is my Switch 2. I put my account on there. I had the system transfer, and this is the very first thing I tried. So I end up taking this adapter, not a MiG switch, but just a straight up cartridge adapter. I had two cartridges in there. I did have a little bit of trouble at least inserting this here when I was trying to get it all set up, but once I got it set up, I was able to get the cartridges actually running and working and showing up on here. Now, I do share this because you can see this was the day one firmware update. This, I think, was 20.1.1. So you can see I'm able to load up the games just fine, and then I tried to boot up a game. This one I had to download an update, so I had to wait for it to update, but after it updated, it was able to play successfully. I'll actually even show you all right here. We can kind of not zoom, but we can kind of move past this a bit. Okay, let's actually get the boot here. All right, so there we go. It ends up downloading the update. It applies the update. It boots in here, brings up the original Switch logo, of course, and the game should run. I know it should because I've played this multiple times on here, and I remember recording this video, of course, but you can see, here we go, the game actually boots up. So the reason why I want to show this is because this clip itself, this part alone, should dispel the idea that any type of cartridge switching or cartridge manipulation or anything related to that was the only reason why it was detected. I do believe that there are other detections on the system. Do we know what they are? Not 100% right now. So I bring this up because I'm trying to show that the Switch 2 has been able to tell the difference between plugging in a cartridge, plugging in a cartridge through an adapter, or maybe not on that one. If it's just straight up pass-through, it just sees it as a pass-through, but it could tell the difference between using a cartridge in an adapter and playing a cartridge dump from a flash cartridge, like the MiG. So it's always been detectable on the Switch 2. I do not believe that has been detected on the original Switch, simply the hardware was not capable of doing that because it came out so much later in the life cycle. So in order to even have it detected on the original Switch, you'd have to either be sharing your games, so blatant piracy, load up games improperly, so not doing it properly, not having all the right files, or you would have to completely update the system, like from a hardware level, and change the game card reader so that it's able to pick up and detect those changes, such as what they did with the Switch 2. They're probably not going to go back and do that on the Switch 1 because it would just be far too much work. So again, that's to say here, it doesn't seem like using a MiG Flash on the Switch 2 is a good idea at all. Even if you try to stay offline, even if you don't play online or any of that, it really doesn't matter because of what the logging and telemetry on the system has. So really, if you do all your shenanigans offline and then you connect online, really as soon as you do, it reports back to Nintendo and your system can get banned. This is nothing new here. We've seen it with plenty of other systems, but really what I'm saying here is the only way to really use a MiG Flash safely on a Switch 2 is to essentially self-ban yourself. Like, take your system offline, put it into airplane mode, and never touch online. But at that point, again, you're dirtying up your system, and whenever it does connect online, it's going to get flagged for a ban. So just keep that in mind. Now, this was something that was cool here. This is NVNT's SDEX to M.2 adapter, which is a microSD Express to M.2 adapter project. And they state here that this is an adapter for the Nintendo Switch 2, which converts the microSD Express slot to an NVMe M.2 or M key slot. Think microSD cards are difficult to find or expensive, looking to expand your storage for cheaper, just use the NVMe M.2 SSD that you have and or can easily find. The project is open source hardware under the GPL version 3 license. It's also stated that this project also encompasses the sister project of microSD Express to SD Express adapter, which is a pin-to-pin conversion kit allowing full-size SD Express cards to be used on the Switch 2. I actually didn't see that before, so that's cool. So to explain this here, as some might be asking how is this possible, it's stated this is possible because of the Nintendo Switch 2's microSD Express slot supports SD Express 7.1 standard, which exposes a true PCIe Gen 3 X1 interface and utilizes the NVMe protocol for communication. This adapter simply maps PCIe X1 from the Switch 2's microSD express slot to a standard M.2 2230 NVMe SSD. After further research and review from users, an onboard MCU FPGA will be required for the handshake process with the Switch 2. So it looks like the hardware is being made. This is still in progress right now, and even the status, they say it's a work in progress, and currently an early proof of concept prototype of the adapter has been made, and additionally, production ready, hopefully 2-layer PCBs for the microSD Express breakout board and the NVMe breakout board have been uploaded, and it looks like the microSD card Express to the SD Express full-size adapter is ready to be uploaded on there. Now, they do state for warnings and use at your own risk, and they're not liable for any damage to your drive, Switch 2, or other devices. Only use a low voltage, low power M.2 2230 NVMe drive, and do not use this in legacy microSD slots such as the original Nintendo Switch. Interesting. So you have all the pinouts and points that are shown on here. You got the wiring schematics, but then this is what I wanted to show you all. So here we have the microSD Express dummy card. So this one's been made here, at least if you want to kind of simulate that itself. You have the microSD Express breakout board. You have the NVMe M.2 SSD breakout board, the microSD Express to SD Express prototype adapter, and finally the microSD Express to NVMe M.2 pin-to-pin adapter here. Now, I haven't seen anyone work on these, manufacture them, or what have you on here, and especially if this requires a FPGA, I'm not sure how functional this is going to be right off the bat here. I mean, even if the hardware is locked in, we just don't know how functional it's going to be, if it needs, an additional firmware or something installed on there. But either way, it's been cool seeing this here, and you can even see as I'm recording this right now, this is updated as of 9 hours ago, so they're still working on this project here. So if you're interested in something like this, it would be worth following this to see what happens. Now, I did want to share a Reddit post, or actually a Reddit comment specifically on here to maybe signal boost this a little bit, because I know there's a lot of people, with the release of the Switch 2 and coming off of the original Switch's really awesome homebrew scene, there's been people, I'm sure, who are really excited to see what custom firmware, what jailbreaks, what hacks will come out for the Switch 2. Now, SciresM, the author of Atmosphere, ended up posting about this when Atmosphere 1.9.1 was released, and he did end up posting this on the Switch Hack subreddit, but I wanted to share this here because there was a little bit of an exchange. Now, there was one person who asked here, "Thanks for your work, I like Atmosphere, I installed the first version as soon as it came out a few years ago. For now, I don't plan on buying a Switch 2 when it launches. I was so sad to learn in your videos that you said you won't do Atmosphere on the new console when the day it will be possible to install it. Of course, but I understand it's a lot of time. Thanks again." So SciresM ended up replying pretty respectfully, and he said here, just quoting, "It's just too much time. I love Atmosphere and love working on it, but I put in something crazy like 10 to 20,000 hours on the Switch, and I'm nearly a decade older than I was when I started the project. Between my planning on having kids, a general feeling that it would completely deplete what reserves I have left to commit another 20,000 hours to a brand new console, and other reasons, I think it's just wisest for me to explicitly commit to not maintaining another custom firmware, even if it does get hacked. I'll be poking at the new console, and I'm very interested in seeing what will happen, but one commitment like this is enough for everybody. Of course, don't worry, Atmosphere has my continued support for new updates, etc. for the Switch 1, no matter what." So I just wanted to share this here, not just because it's straight up from SciresM, who again is the author, the main author of Atmosphere custom firmware, but just to have something here that people can refer to and reference if people are going to be asking, "Hey, Cyrus, when are you going to be working on Switch 2 custom firmware? When is Atmosphere 2 coming out?" The answer is, it's not going to be him. He is thankfully and really awesomely still going to maintain the original Atmosphere, but in regard to custom firmware or Atmosphere on the Switch 2, it's not going to be SciresM doing it. He has already confirmed it here. Now, this is something tangentially modding related here, and this here was some news that also set the internet ablaze here on the Xbox side of house. It stated here, and this is from Insider Gaming, that Xbox bringing original and Xbox 360 games to PC via emulation, it's claimed. And I just want to share here before I really even get into this here, you gotta realize this has been a rumor for a long time. It's currently 2025. Microsoft is trying to phase out Windows 10. Windows 11 is the main Microsoft consumer operating system, but rumors like this have been in circulation since Windows 8. And I say that because around the time Windows 8 came out, there were actually some updates that came out that people were reverse engineering and looking into, and they saw references for Xbox 360 emulation all the way back in Windows 8. So this is nothing new here to be talking about. And I'm talking about this here because I'd like to reference the beginning of the article. They state here, Xbox could be ready to bring the past to the present. According to a new rumor from known Xbox leaker Xstasis, I hope I'm saying that right, but Xbox is working to bring original Xbox and Xbox 360 games to PC and other platforms via emulation. Xstasis states via machine translation, a source who works directly at Microsoft said the company is working on what's provisionally known internally as Xbox Classics. According to the claim, this wouldn't be a simple re-release of classic games. However, sometimes it's nice to sit on some of this news because you can see there's an update here stating that Xenia, the emulator team, has denied any involvement in an Xbox Classics project. And the reason why that's important to state is because if we come down here a little bit, it's stated that Xstasis also says that the Xbox is working with the Xenia team in order to make this feature happen. Xenia, for those who don't know, is an open source Xbox 360 emulator currently available on PC. So let's go ahead and see the updated page here, and they state, this is again from Mike Straw, the same author as before, Xenia, the Xbox 360 emulator developer, denies Xbox Classics claim. Technically, I mean, that's the project, that's not the developer, but let's just go into this here. Really, this can be picked out with a few things here. First of all, in the official Discord server for Xenia, who Xstasis said was working with Xbox on the project, members of the team immediately denied any of it happening. It's not real. Team member Zolo Cluck said. Microsoft has their own Xbox 360 emulator. They'd never even consult Xenia. They then added, if it was real, I'd be under an NDA. Journalist Jez Corden also shot down the claims of it happening right now on social media, saying Xbox is gunning to bring Xbox games to more devices, but this particular scenario isn't a thing at the moment. And finally here, for what it's worth, Xstasis is standing by his claim. Quoting here, the full context is that Microsoft gets sponsorships, benefits, and staff from GitHub. Every month, they make alliances or hire groups and individuals who contribute solutions and projects to Microsoft. In this case, Xenia joined the program last month, he said via machine translation. If this is the case and they are under NDA, logically they can't do anything but deny it, but don't worry, we'll see you in 2026. I myself, I'm putting in my own opinion here. I'm actually going to believe the Xenia team on this one here. That's just my own opinion on this. Is Microsoft working on a Xbox and Xbox 360 emulator for PC? I guess we'll see. Is it involving the Xenia team? I doubt it. That's me personally on here. So that's why I kind of want to talk about this, because it was related to the emulation aspect of modding, which we all know and love. Speaking of the Xbox 360, I did want to share this, which I had this saved for a bit, and I figured, better late than never on here. But this here is a project from Reddit user Quad5914, or at least their GitHub is AngryCarrot789. And this here is cheat engine for Xbox 360 called MemEngine 360. They state here, hey guys, I've been writing this program for a few weeks and want to share. Maybe you'll find it useful. And if you've ever used cheat engine before, this is pretty much what it's doing here, where in short, you essentially hook this into your game and you're going to be looking for values that you can modify. So here it looks like they're trying to modify the primary ammo count on Black Ops 2. So essentially what you do is you kind of just search for values on here and you whittle it down until you find the value which is responsible for setting and tracking the primary ammo in this game, for example. And then from there, you can use cheat engine to either directly inject your own values, such as, set your ammo count to 99 and make sure it doesn't go down. And then if you're making cheats, if you're making trainers, you can then end up using your work from cheat engine to implement in that to end up making a cheat or trainer that has that function. Hopefully I summed it up well enough. But they state here that your Xbox needs to be running XBDM for this to work. Just like cheat engine, all you need to do is connect, enter a value in the value field, change search options if you want, example, scan between two values less than, not equal, etc., and click first scan. Clicking reset clears the results and enables first scan again. Select some scan results and click add scan results to save them if you wish. Double click the data type to change how to interpret the value. You can also double click the value cell in either list to change the value immediately. The values refresh every second automatically. I hope you find this useful. If you have Black Ops 2, here is the address here, but this seems to be consistently the same address as the primary weapons reserve ammo if you want to play around with that. I'm still developing the app, it's a work in progress. He's got a virus total link, the download itself, and the source code. And if we go and check this here on his GitHub page, we have it right here. For example, you could see there's the same screenshot right here, download and build instructions, some instructions at the wiki over how to use it. So, oh, this is quite nice here. So if you want a kind of small breakdown of this, this works out pretty well. But if we come back here, you can go to releases, and from here you can download the latest release available. So awesome to see. Now this here might be something of interest to you all. It's just quick, it's cool, I want to show it to you all here. This is in the world of the original Xbox, and this is a UIX Lite 0.5 demo with Team Resurgence 720p 60 patches. And well, let me just go ahead and play out the 46-second video and let you all see here. Now, if you're watching this video, like you're watching the podcast itself and you're seeing this and you don't see the big deal with this, well, number one, this is a custom dashboard, which is UIX Lite, which is essentially going in and it's essentially if you still want to use the stock dashboard, but you want to have modded options in here. Because you could see, for example, if we go back, well, obviously there's features like you could see here, all the titles here, you can load up your games just fine. So like you have a modded dashboard. When you go to the actual Xbox hard disk, you have applications, dashboards, games, file browser, UIX toolbox. None of this is available in the completely stock dashboard, right? So you could see here, this is pretty obvious, it is different. But I'm not trying to show you all the dashboard features, I'm trying to show you all the dashboard itself. Because if you haven't picked up on it, well, this is the dashboard which has been patched to run natively at 720p 60 frames per second. But this is working on the hardware itself. You can run this through an emulator here just fine. But if you even end up patching this, like you install UIX Lite and you install the patches on your actual console itself, this here will work at 720p 60. So I know we've gone from Switch 2 to 360 to Xbox, but we're going even older with the PlayStation 2 here because there was a new release for the PS2 called ProtoPwn. Now this here is as it states, an exploit for the proto-kernel PlayStation 2 systems. So this would be the SCPH 1000, which is technically the very first PS2, like the ones that came out in Japan, the SCPH 15000, and the DTL H10000S, that enables arbitrary code execution through a flaw in the OSD sys browser code. So they state that in order to make this work, it consists of a fairly simple two-stage payload and packer tool. So number one, there's a in-browser placement in which it runs from this address here. It patches the OSD sys code to execute a custom function in the main thread, applies the EE load kernel patch, deinitializes OSD sys, finds the target ELF on the memory card, and then it executes the embedded ELF loader, which once it jumps to that, it's able to clean up after OSD sys, load the target ELF, resets the IOP, and then executes the target ELF. And there's also a simple packer script, which it states it does the bare minimum to get OSD sys to accept and decompress our payload, and it actually increases the file size here. Now, that's a lot to say what's going on here, and I will say, for some people, because I think there was some confusion with this, for people who think this works on every single PS2 out there, no, it does not. But the reason why this is big is because there wasn't an exploit like this available for these three models of the PlayStation 2. So it's now safe to say that because of ProtoPwn, every single PlayStation 2 out there can be exploited in some way, whether it's ProtoPwn, free McBoot, free HD boot, or something such as Fortuna, Funtuna, OpenTuna, any of those exploits. You're essentially able to put some files on a memory card and then exploit your PS2 to get it into the land of Homebrew that way. That's what this is meaning here. But some people might want a little bit of a visual of how to run this here. And I will say I can't do this here directly just because I don't have any of these three models. However, again, we have a video, so let's actually take a look at that. Admittedly, I just don't like that this has to be a YouTube short on here, but this here is El Isra showing the video right before it released for ProtoPwn. So you can see here, they have a PS2 up and running, it's working, they are in the memory card browser, and you could see a save file here for ProtoPwn. So let's just go ahead and let this play out. So you could see it's about 78 kilobytes. That's fine. So we know it's sitting there. He ends up resetting the PS2. Let's wait and see. There we go. So it was able to reset, and instead of going through the standard PS2 startup and everything, it ended up launching directly into uLaunch ELF, and that is just because of the ProtoPwn files which are copied over to that memory card. So that's how it goes on here. So if you have one of those, not necessarily unhackable models, but if you have, and there's the files of course, but if you have one of these models that you couldn't run a memory card entry point exploit on, you now have the option to do so. So give ProtoPwn a shot. So now we're hopping over to the PSP for something that is not necessarily like new. It came out about a month ago here, but I've thought this is cool. I haven't tried it out just yet, but I do like seeing projects like this here. This here is BatterySteve for the PSP, which is a battery capacity tester. Now this is from developer Kutsi, in which they state BatterySteve is a lightweight and easy to use tool for testing the real capacity of your PSP battery. No more guessing how much juice is left in your tired old battery. This is able to render 2D and 3D scenes to give the system some real load. You're able to choose between the 222 or 333 MHz CPU speed. This works on all PSP models. It is compatible with official Sony and third-party batteries, and this is designed to run until you run out of battery, and then it shows the runtime after. It also ends up saving the last run into a text file there. So this is cool to see at least, and the reason why you might want to use this here, the reason why this is such a big deal, is because not only you get to verify and see how good your old PSP battery is, or if you get a new third-party one, what the actual capacity is, but instead of just, actually sitting there and playing a game, or letting it run a movie in the background, or I think one test has been to run like a Nyan Cat like homebrew on there. Instead of doing that, you can actually run something here on idle that ends up doing some more work, almost like it's playing a game, but you don't have to actually play the game there or babysit it. You just let the system run. Now you can run it from their website right here, which is linked, and it even states here that this is a lightweight and easy to use tool for testing the real capacity of your PSP battery. They show it in the XMB, in the main menu, and of course running a test. However, it is noted that BatterySteve is not supported on firmwares lower than 6.60 plus ARC4, so please update to 6.61 and install the ARC4 custom firmware. I don't mean this in a bad way, but I believe this is the first homebrew I've seen for the PSP that has been exclusive to a custom firmware, this one here being ARC4. So they've got the features here, the system requirements, installation, and all that, although this seems to be just the same as installation for any other type of homebrew. But yeah, this is great right here. Even if you want to have a graph generator, you have that, but you have the download right here in which you can download it and try it out yourself and see how well it works. Now I say this respectfully, but there's been a flood of a ton of decompilation efforts and ports and such, and I wanted to cover at least some of them on here, but I'm kind of going to hit these in rapid fire. So if I'm going a little bit quick, well, it's because there's a lot of them here. The first one here being Animal Crossing for the GameCube being decompiled, covered over on GBA Temp by Chari or Krista Norin. They state here another monumental fan effort has been achieved. The team behind the Animal Crossing decompilation have reached 100% progress on recreating the game's code. This isn't a full 100%, as noted by the project creator Coiler, hopefully I said that right, who states that there's still some work left to do, but it means that Animal Crossing for the GameCube can be modded fully and soon ported to other platforms once released. Additionally, the same team has been working on backporting and translating content from the Japanese exclusive Dobutsu no Mori E+ into a project called Animal Crossing Deluxe. I didn't know about that at all. That's really cool. Now, even quoted here, part of it was already stated, but another part that was not stated was that there's still some more work to do on supporting libraries like the GameCube SDK, among others. However, this does not impact modding. Huge shout out to everyone who contributed and supported the project along the way. This has been 2.5 years in the making. I'll have a more fitting announcement when we hit 100% in the future, and there's a source here to the GitHub if you want to check that out. Renegade Amante ends up dropping a really cool release for the Vita, which is Ship of Harkinian Vita here. And he did end up releasing a 1.0 release, but this is the 1.1 release as it's been updated. And this here is a native port to the Vita of Legend of Zelda Ocarina of Time. They even state here, this is a source port of Legend of Zelda Ocarina of Time based off the decompilation efforts of the game. It features several enhancements and mod support. The Vita port is based on a custom old version, more or less Con Charlie 6.1.2. Now you do need to have LibShack already installed, and if you've run ports like this, then you probably already have it installed. and you're going to need one of these ROMs of the game. So you'll either need the, well, Ocarina for all of them, but you either need the Debug PAL GameCube ROM, the PAL GameCube ROM, the Debug PAL GameCube Master Quest ROM, or the Debug PAL Master Quest ROM again. Well, it looks like it's just a different hash on there, but you're going to need one of those at least to get started on here. Now, we also have another release and update that we can cover here, which is the 1.1 release of Perfect Dark Vita, which is, well, Perfect Dark Vita. They even state here, this is a port of the Perfect Dark source port by FGS FDS based on the Perfect Dark decompilation efforts. And again, for the installation features, you do need libshack already on here, and you're going to need one of the 2 ROMs in Z64 format. Well, I guess there's 4 technically, but you need the NTSC final version, which is recommended, or the NTSC 1.0 version, or the Japan final version, or the PAL final version. Now, do keep in mind here, they state that there's going to be some frame drops on this. The port ships with an optimized config file with preset controls that should be more or less easy to use. This does feature an auto frame skip option that should allow audio to function decently despite the frame drops. It also features a silent mode that can be launched from the live bubble area, so there's no audio but the game will run faster. And lastly, it has a shader cache implementation. So every time a shader is compiled for the first time, you'll notice a small shutter in game. So just to keep that all in mind. Really cool to see this though. Now, in all my years of doing this show and running this channel here, I don't believe I've covered an arcade port of a game on here. I'm actually trying to, no, actually, I do take that back. I remember when MVG was showing his Outrun port on the Switch. We did cover that. So I guess not the first time, but it's very rare that we do it. Let's just say that. However, we can make a little bit of a change in this episode here because this here is Project R, which they state is an unofficial native port of the arcade games San Francisco Rush The Rock and San Francisco Rush 2049 to Windows, Mac OS, and Linux. Now, do note, this project is a work in progress without a finish date. It will always be free to play and share. And of course, I do like this here. If you were charged money for this or any future version, seek a refund immediately. Project R is a passion project out of love for the Rush series. So it does state here that in order to do this, you need to bring over the game assets. So for the Rock, you'll need a copy of the Rock, the arcade hard drive itself, as well as the audio ROM files. And the same thing for Rush 2049. There's 2 options that you can pick on here, either special or tournament edition, but you need essentially an arcade hard drive dump from one of those. And then it shows some of the computer requirements and such on here, as well as the download and the setup on how to get this all started. Now, there's a couple of videos here. So this is the first one I'm showing, but you can see this has been taken in a 5120 by 1440p resolution. So you do have the ultra wide support on here. The game looks great as well too. It seems to be running real well, and like this is okay. Like I'm skipping ahead a little bit here, but like this is nice. This is cool. This, this would be really fun in an ultra wide. This would be fun to play. So this is looking awesome so far. The developer even has one for 2049, which this is the one I have more experience with. And just seeing this right here, the dial pad, this is essentially how you can like set up your saves and such on there. You could like assign yourself a number and then you can recall it to save your progress on an arcade game of all things. So that was cool. And I did play this in the arcades a decent amount, but looking at this here, jumping around a bit, yeah, this looks great. This looks so fun to play. So this is really awesome to see here. So if you're wanting to get your Rush fix in, these are certainly not bad options at all. And a big shout out and thank you to Dog, like literally to Dog. That is their username right here for working on this and releasing it. Now this one here I'm more telling you all about. Don't really have too much to show on the GitHub itself, but this one is being worked on here by Nisox and biggest Sonic fan. But this is Sonic the Fighter's a work in progress decompilation, and they state that this repository will contain buildable code using GCC-esque tools to compile the executable binaries necessary to run the data of Sonic the Fighter's on a Model 2B arcade board. It is an accumulation of many years of work to better understand the inner workings of AM2's arcade engine from the early to mid 90s. So this will be something that you're going to want to pay attention to if you're into Sonic or Sonic the Fighters. And this was another thing too, I actually forgot that Sonic the Fighters was an arcade game. I never saw it in arcades. I never played it in arcades. I know it got a console port, and then that port got ported to other consoles such as the 360, but I actually forgot that it was originally an arcade game. So here's another arcade game if you want to look at a decompilation effort and maybe in the future playing this natively on a PC or another platform. pay attention to this repository. Now here's another port that's been cool here. This is from developer Falco Gurgis, who has been working on several recent and even past, but more recently I've covered their work here over on Twitter for the Dreamcast. And he states here, finally, time for the big announcement everyone has been begging and waiting for. Here's a very early direct hardware capture of Mario Kart 64 running on the Sega Dreamcast, of course. This game was literally just barely decompiled the other day with a codebase that is still quite married to the N64 platform. But this didn't stop J.N. Martin, the dark coding wizard who brought us a dynamically lit and bump mapped Doom 64 and Wipeout running at over 100 frames per second on the Dreamcast. At this point, now that we're scrolled down a little bit, I'll also play this video here too. What you're seeing is the insane progress made by one man in just 3 weeks. As is to be expected, there are all kinds of visual glitches and rendering artifacts. The frame rate is all over the place, and there's no audio yet, which is totally typical of any ambitious DC port in the early stages. The DC build wouldn't even get past the menu screen without crashing or running out of RAM until just a few days ago. Yet here it is. Every level playable with multiplayer support already on the Dreamcast. Even in this early stage, you can already see the game benefiting from the PVR's crisp 480 output. Each player's little viewport window in 4-player mode is the same resolution as the entire screen was on the N64. Stay tuned for future updates as J.N. Martin continues his work to bring this classic to our little white box of dreams. So here it is. I mean, this is early, and even if you follow him here on Twitter, he's still making and showing more progress in videos and such, but this here is not emulation. This is Mario Kart 64 running natively on the Dreamcast very early on. Oh, and if you need more Mario Kart 64 news right here with a decompilation effort or anything else, this is from Harbor Masters, and they have a new repository, well, at least new to me here, being Spaghetti Kart, which if you check this out here is, well, an engine full of spaghetti, which might not be the best here if you're needing this to work. But this here, even with it being a little bit vague, you can see it with the instructions on here that this does not include any copyrighted assets, and you need to bring your own dump of the game itself, like your own ROM. You're going to need to set it up here. You generate a O2R file. If you've used any of their PC ports before, you'll know how to do this here. But in short, this is not emulation yet again. This is a native PC port of Mario Kart 64. So now, as long as you follow these instructions, you can play Mario Kart 64 natively on your PC. Again, really awesome to see. We've got another project here I didn't know anything about until it was released, much like I feel like many other people, and this is from the channel 3DO HD, but this is Mortal Kombat 2 3DO Edition, which is now available. Now, for some people who might be wondering why this is such a big deal, they even state here, a little bittersweet, but after 2 long years, Mortal Kombat 2 for the 3DO is effectively complete. Feature complete anyway. Gameplay has been improved and sped up, all fighters are in place, there are dozens of Easter eggs to find, loading time is minimal, especially considering this is a CD console. Finishers and Shang Tsung morphs are all loaded asynchronously, while music continues to play, and there are 0 loading pauses. It's a shame the 3DO never got this franchise when it was alive. It's a legendary console and deserved a better fate and reputation. And yeah, many people have looked into this, they've tried it out, they've checked it out, and I share this here because this is apparently not just Mortal Kombat 2 plopped onto the 3DO. This is really rebuilt for the 3DO, and people are even saying that this is one of the best ports, if not the best port and build of Mortal Kombat 2, which is really surprising to see. You could even see here steady 60 frames per second, full-size arcade original graphics, sound effects, and music tracks. So this here is no slouch in the world of the Mortal Kombat ports. So if you wanted to try out a 3DO, or if you wanted to try and dust off a 3DO to play Mortal Kombat 2, this is a great reason to do so. Phew, alright, so now with all those ports and such out of the way, we're going to get to do some of the more fun stuff. And near the end of these episodes, I like to cover something that I find to be really cool, awesome, maybe funny, random, different, could be directly or tangentially related to the world of modding on here, but there's actually several things I want to cover that kind of classify under this here. And this one is not necessarily a release, but this is something I saw that was pretty cool here, stating that for the first time ever, a PS1 motherboard not made by Sony is here. And this is from Laurentino B over on Reddit. And they state here, the first PlayStation 1 motherboard ever made not by Sony, but by a single individual. After months of reverse engineering and design, I'm proud to share the mock-up of the nsOne, the first fully PlayStation 1 compatible motherboard built entirely from scratch by one person.
This isn't an emulator, it's not an FPGA, it's not a modern replica. It's a real motherboard complete with the original PS1 chips, CPU, GPU, SPU, RAM, oscillators, regulators, etc., and fully plug and play in the original case. The format, completely new. It is based on the PU23 series, used in the SCPH 9000 models, but reintroduces the parallel port, which Sony had removed, a hybrid that never existed before. What you see here is a mock-up used to validate the footprints of the chips and connectors, all of which were redrawn from scratch, since they were undocumented proprietary components. But here's the best part. The fully routed, complete version is already on the way. It includes multi-layer routing, all components, and the final layout, and it will be released soon. The project is called nsOne, short for Not Sony's One. Everything here was done with accessible tools and handcrafted techniques, optical sanding, scanning, net-by-net reverse engineering. The schematic and PCB were manually reconstructed with extreme attention to detail. It's a tribute to the PS1, to retro hardware, and to the belief that one person can really build the impossible. I'll be sharing more details soon, and maybe the full working board. Feedback, questions, or even just a wow are always welcome. And they end up posting a few photos of it here, so we can go ahead and check these all out. So here's one of the photos at least, and it looks like, yeah, this was done, or at least pressed up through PCBWay. Now, they ended up just getting the board itself here fabricated, and then of course they had to end up taking these components and they had to plop them on, so they had to pull them from another console, and then they were able to put them on here. So you can't like make the chips yourself, is what I'm saying. You've got another photo right here showing the other side of the motherboard. This one is unpopulated, as you can see here, and there's even a QR code that you can scan, but you could see that it just drops right into the PS1 shell right here. You got another photo right here. Again, this has been plopped in there, and there's not any components at all on this, so this one is just completely unpopulated, just the raw PCB itself. Now you can see here, this is a photo of at least a couple of the motherboards which were sacrificed for the greater good here. So awesome to see that, and yet again, it uses the 9000 series footprint, except it ends up having the parallel port on there, which is, again, really awesome. And lastly, there's been several supporters on here who ended up getting their names put on it, like quite literally, their names were ended up being pressed onto this PCB. So a nice little gratitude option right there. Love to see that. Another cool thing I want to share, I had seen this website and I suppose Service and Business launch a few months ago here, but this is Homebrew Factory, and for a place where we like to talk about homebrew, I thought this would be a cool place to talk about it here at least. This here is, you can see, the best place for all of your homebrew video games. And this here seems to be similar to websites such as Drop, for example, where this ends up allowing people who create not necessarily ROM hacks, but homebrews of games, for example, the Game Boy in this case, this allows them to have an opportunity to be able to create and sell a physical copy of their game. Now, the way it works here is there's several that are available. You end up having to create a campaign, and you can see that their order numbers are not very high, and I mean that in a good way. You don't have to have like 500 or 1,000 or 5,000 orders. Like this one, 38 prepaid orders, 80 prepaid orders, so not all too many on there, but there's a few other games where you could see here that, you know, they're pretty low in this. Like this one needs at minimum 20 orders in order to be pressed. So if you want to do a really low, like a low run of a homebrew game on here, and you have one that you're making and you want to put it out on here, you can certainly do that. Otherwise, if there's any homebrew games like this that you want to have on, you know, a Game Boy or a Nintendo or a Mega Drive or Genesis, you can purchase them here as well too. Not only you get a physical copy of that game, but you also end up being able to support the developer directly, which I think is pretty beneficial. To be very clear, I don't have any connection to this website. I've never talked with the owners of it. I really actually don't know who runs it here. I really don't even know who runs it here. I just end up seeing this on Blue Sky a few months ago when it ended up releasing, or I guess when the site ended up opening. I thought this was cool, and you know, I kind of wanted to use the opportunity to signal boost it. Sometimes I end up seeing something which I just think overall is a really cool moment in time, and this here is from the Dreamcast Junkyard, in which they end up quote tweeting this, and they said, "It is so cool that Kinji Tosakai, the peripheral designer at Sega involved in the creation of the Dreamcast VMU, owns a VM2. And for those who don't know, that is a new, modernized, and improved VMU for the Dreamcast. It's not official, so it's called the VM2, but you can even see in this 10-second video right here, oh, it's one of these vertical ones. This was from him. He ended up like the actual person who created, who helped create the VMU, the original one. He ended up posting this video on here, but just one of those really awesome moments where you see that, you know, something that was made in this community is now in the hands of
the people who end up making the original hardware that inspired all of this. I love seeing that. And finally, this here is nothing new, but I did want to at least share this because I thought it was cool. I'll be honest, I never thought I'd ever be just like linking and sharing the GitHub repository for Electronic Arts, but we're doing so because Electronic Arts actually ended up doing something that kind of surprised everyone. I believe there was a, now forgive me because I'm not a huge Command & Conquer fan, just not that I don't like the game, it just really wasn't for me. I'd really never played those types of games all too much. However, I believe it had to be for like some kind of anniversary or birthday of the Command & Conquer series, but you can see right here there's several pinned repositories here, and these are pinned because EA ended up open sourcing several of the Command & Conquer games. You can see the Command & Conquer Remastered Collection, General Zero Hour, Renegade, Red Alert, I know that was a big one, Tiberian Dawn, as well as the modding support on here have all been released as open source. We can even check the repositories here. They're actually pretty active, it seems, on here. That might be a little bit of a mess on this, but let me check CNC Remastered Collection. Like this one here, I mean, this is the beginning of the year. It's set to read only because it's not like they're readily still working on this, but they did end up releasing this here. Actually, wait a minute. Well, I mean, there's a Python file here, so they end up doing a few things on this, but here it states, yeah, this repository includes source code for Tiberian Dawn DLL, Red Alert DLL, and the map editor for the Command & Conquer Remaster Collection. This release provides support to the Steam Workshop for the Command & Conquer Remaster Collection. So, again, if you actually want to mess around with the source code, play around with it for the Command & Conquer games, you're now able to do so thanks to EA, of all people, of all companies.
Anyways, that is about it for this episode of ModChat. If you enjoyed this episode, if you were entertained, if you got to learn something along the way, that is really awesome. I'm happy to impart that to you all, and we could all hang out and be entertained together here. However, if you have not made it to the end of one of these episodes, well, this is when I like to do a little bit of a keyword type thing. I'll use a keyword or a key phrase, and if you use it in a comment on the video upload, I'll know that you made it to the end of this episode. So one of the things I like to do is, you all see, I usually like to have a console running in the background. Oh, if anybody's going to freak out about this, because you all might see, there's literally an original Xbox on top of a Slim, and that's just completely blocking the vent there. No, don't worry, this is just for this, okay? Like, this is just for this. I don't run the systems that way. We're good on there. But that right there is one of my favorite games on the original Xbox, Hunter the Reckoning, right here. I don't know how many of you all have played it. If you haven't tried this out, if you haven't played it, I'd actually recommend giving it a shot. It's not the best game by any means, but it's still really enjoyable, and you know, more difficult than I would have expected. I think it got one sequel, maybe two, and then it kind of just fizzled out, and we never heard anything about it. But this original one came out in 2002, and it still holds up pretty well, in my opinion. But you're going to play it if you do play it, and you'll see that it's not that it's bad, it's just a lot of it is, oh, this is very 2002. And if you didn't exist in 2002, well, I mean, that's just... I'm just feeling older saying that. I don't know. But you know what? Let's go ahead and use the term Hunter. Have you played Hunter the Reckoning? Have you heard of Hunter the Reckoning? When asked for a password, do you use Hunter 2 as your password? Let me know. Maybe not the password aspect of it, but if you use the word Hunter in a comment on the video upload, I'll know that you made it to the end. I do check out the comments. Lily's probably going to be next to me as I'm reading them as well, too. Lily, you want to, like, show your... Lily! Show your face. I wanted to show you all her face a little bit, but she's just laying down, and it's camera framing and all. Y'all know how it goes. Either way, that's about it for this episode of ModChat. If you enjoyed this episode, a like would absolutely be appreciated. If you didn't like it, a dislike is fine as well, too. As I always say, though, this is Mr. Mario, signing off. Thank you all for listening and watching, everyone. And until next time. Now, I gotta take off this hat and cool down a bit. It's a bit hot here.